Hello, my fellow pluviophiles. Are you disappointed? It was supposed to rain today, and it has not. So as a pluviophile, I am disappointed. But I hope you're having a super duper day. So I've got a bunch of questions on my device here. So let's get right to it. Bea asks, would love to know your process for choosing the colors. Good question. Depends on the client. For the doggies, the client really likes gray, so I went with a neutral gray for all of the midtones. And then I chose a moderate blue and yellow for the shadows and the highlights respectively. Then a navy and white as the very, very darkest and lightest to add some depth. Why blue and yellow? They also showed me the space this portrait's gonna hang in their home, and blue and yellow just happen to look really good. Sometimes the client wants certain colors. Sometimes the color is all up to me. One wedding portrait, I took all of the colors from the family tartans in the photos. Another wedding portrait, my inspiration was Miami peacocks. It's really all over the place. No one asks, it looks like you're just copying a photo and painting right over it. Are you a dirty cheater? Good question. It all comes down to client expectations. When I did those couple of wedding portraits and the doggy portraits, the client is expecting the brides and the grooms and the dogs to look a certain way. They asked for realism, so if I gave them a cubist interpretation, they'd be very disappointed. The client is expecting the brides and the grooms and the dogs to look just like their real life counterparts. Faces are particularly important in weddings and such, so I spend extra time on those getting the exact license, the exact likeness. And the paint over technique helps me cut down on a lot of time for those, like so many hours. But on my first 4 portraits or so that I have not shown on here, I literally did just have an image off to the side of my working screen while I'm eyeballing it. So I don't actually need the paint over technique, but it really does cut down on a lot of time when in the end, I really just need that exact likeness. Plus, I would like to cut down on 80 hours of screen time every week. No one asks, speaking of workflow, what is your workflow for working on portraits? Good question. First off is client expectations. Making sure I know what exactly the client wants, subject-wise, size-wise, color-wise, so on and so forth. Then I gather resources, which is usually from the client, large photos from the client. I can't do small photos. A 6 kilobyte PNG is not going to cut it when I need a 24 by 36 painting in the end. Because I'm painting at real size. I can't take an image this big and turn it so big. For the wedding portraits, the photos came from the official wedding photographer because they generally have really good lighting and composition to begin with. So it's much easier to pick out like the very best mood for the most interesting painting. They've already got photographs. They don't want another version of a photograph. They want an interesting painting. And I look through all of those and I figure out which would be the most interesting for the painting size that I need. And sometimes I need to do some minor editing like photoshopping people closer together, taking some things out, minor things like that. This step also includes going through inspiration, especially for colors. Color is the driving factor for my artwork. So I make sure to nail that right after getting the formal composition. The formal composition being the shapes on the canvas. So before I start painting anything, I make a whole bunch of quick swatches on my artboard and figure out which exact colors look good together. And to make sure they look good on the whole image, I will take those colors, drop them into a gradient, and set that as a color map over the reference. That gives me an approximation of what the final image could look like. But 99% of the time, I have to go in and correct things on the fly. Or I have to combine several versions of the image together in order to get the right depth. It's actually not the kind of thing you just slap a filter on and expect it to come out just right for your artist's vision. You actually have to go in and manipulate the lighting and the colors to get the art portion to come through. Generally, the more I can get right at this stage, the faster the entire painting is going to come along. And to make sure, I make a super quick color sketch of the portrait with the reference and send it to the client, make sure they're okay with the colors and the composition. And from there, I can start on the actual painting. And then it really is just a matter of smearing and scratching and smudging the colors around until it looks right. Throw paint on the painting, and then the painting happens until it's done. Generally, I start with the midtones with a very large brush size, and then I'll go in with some highlights with a smaller brush size and some shades. And I generally work down to the smallest brush sizes, and I just keep switching between midtones and highlights and shadows until it comes along. I do always save the very fun thing for last, just so I have something to look forward to. Generally, I'll start with something a little more boring that isn't quite so consequential, like clothing. And then the most consequential portion, usually the face, I will save for almost last. Eyes, I wait until most of the face is done because eyes are absolutely the most detailed portion. And then hair is super fast and easy, so I just do that last because I want something easy after doing all of the hard work. At the very end of the painting, like the last 10% or so, I disable all of the reference layers. They get thrown out. I will then look at the painting and brush over anything, take stuff out, if it doesn't look good on its own as a painting. Not comparing it to any other photos or reference material, it has to look good on its own. If there's something that looks like a distraction or you can't tell what it is or is just kind of weird, that gets painted over. Distractions don't get to stay, just the good parts of the painting. There was one time I took a bow tie off of the groom just because nobody could tell what it was. And then for backgrounds, I just do a faux bokeh effect because they look really good and they're just kind of easy to do. And I think about changing it up sometimes, but it just works so well. No one asks. You reference your day job from time to time. What do you do there? Good question. I am a full-time designer, something of a graphic designer, a pre-press artist, and then this other thing where I look through architectural plans and create permit submittals. I mostly make signage, but my company makes a lot of other fabrication stuff, and some days are just more interesting than others. No one asks, you missed uploading a video or two recently. What gives? Good question. Let me get it here. My creative batteries were completely burned out for totally unrelated reasons. One of which, the air conditioning in my house went out, so it was 84 degrees inside my house for some time, which did nothing to help the burnout. So I did indulge in some sewing and reading, which helped recharge some of my creative batteries. And then I was able to get through the home stretch of the dog portrait. Now I'm looking forward to making different kinds of videos now that I have some creativity of my own back. No one asks, what's next now that the doggy portraits are done? Good question. I'd say there are two parts to this answer. One is a little routine lifestyle change, and the second, project development. Firstly, I'm changing up my bedtime and waking up routine to something more sustainable for my body and my health. I have ongoing migraines, not like status migrainosis or anything. I get migraines. My biggest trigger is too little or low quality sleep. So now I'm more rigorous about getting to bed at a healthy 9 p.m. or so. Then I can get enough rest by like 5:30 in the morning, and I can start the next phase of my exercise program and still have time for light reading before I go to my day job. And then of course, spending, time every evening working on the next project, which takes me to part 2, which is a little up in the air right now. I have several options going on. Option A, jump right into the next portrait project I've been approached for and spend several months filming and doing that. Probably gonna end up being a Christmas present for someone. This is pretty likely to happen. Option B, developing a new collection of art that I can turn into prints. And I've got so many ideas, I want to try. Option C, taking a break for a couple of weeks and doing whatever I feel like while I decide what to do next. By the time you're seeing this, I will have already taken option C for a little brain break and probably going to go with the portrait as my next project. And then that's going to be my last portrait for the foreseeable future. Since I have zero bandwidth to make new art and projects while I'm doing massive commissions, and as a business owner, that's frustrating. I want to develop new art, try new projects, make more things, and that's where my heart's at. So I guess while I'm working on this portrait, I'll be diligent about putting in the time every day to get through it, while also trying to develop and learn techniques to expedite my workflow. No one asks, you've talked a little bit about your collection ideas for mascot skeletons. Do you have anything else that you're wanting to do? Good question. So yes, I did hint at the possibility of doing the Magical School mascot skeleton print collection, and that is something I do want to do, but I'm also really enthralled with the Dungeons and Dragons scene right now. Like, I do have a print collection that kind of caters to Dungeons and Dragons at the moment, like with the werewolf and the beholder and the unicorn. And what was that last one? The owlbear. Of course, the owlbear. How can you forget the owlbear? I am somewhat actively involved in the Critical Role fandom on a particular Discord server, and there are a lot of people who make art in that and also sell unofficial art for Critical Role. Or I should say, there's a lot of unlicensed Critical Role art that is going on, and I'm not sure if I would want to do anything specifically Critical Role related, because I know they're fairly okay with unlicensed artwork being thrown around. But I still feel a little icky about that in some ways. Not because I think it's necessarily wrong, but because my background, I want something that isn't necessarily going to be unlicensable for what I want to do. Because, you know, I'd like to license some artwork sometime in my lifetime. That'd be pretty cool. But I can't do that if it's not something to which I necessarily own the intellectual property rights. I don't know where I was going with that. I guess I would generally like to be able to sell to more specific fandoms, because, you know, fandoms are fun. They're really fun people. I think I understand a lot of the psyche because I'm very involved in fandoms a lot of times when I get into them. And they feel like my people. Y'all people. I'd like to make art for you somehow. I would like the option to make more passion project art rather than getting stuck with exact likeness kind of projects. Maybe that's where I'm going with it. I want to stay involved with a community and be able to make art that they will be so excited to have. And I'm still searching for my place and my people in that kind of a way. It's weird. So I'm thinking maybe I need to pivot, or maybe I need to double down. I don't know. Other than that, I guess some skills I do want to develop are imaginative realism, drawing, you know, from the mind rather than the portrait reference that I have had to use. And I'd like to learn how to do landscapes at some point. I really stink at them now. They're so bad, but I know there's a way to do it. I haven't figured it out yet because I've been so busy with all this other stuff. Flies. And yeah, basically I want to do the things I want to do when I feel like it. But don't we all? No one asks, what's your favorite kind of food? Good question. Chirashi sushi and a lot of whole lot of Japanese stuff. I love Japanese. Watashi no soba wa Hokkaido-jin desu. Matsurai-da-ken. Daisuki yo. I have so many Hokkaido no kuma around this house. But you asked about food, or you didn't ask about food. I like food. I like pasta. I like Japanese. I like burgers. Yeah. No one asks, how do you feel about pineapple on pizza? Good question. I love pineapple on pizza. No one asks, do you have any other hobbies that you have going on? Good question. So Spousal Unit is a DM for a game that we've got going on for D&D 5e. So we're gonna start session 1 of that campaign soon. I'm very excited. I am playing a Dragonborn Druid with a negative charisma modifier who is 13 years old. It's gonna be a good time. Although to be honest, I've also have this other character idea that I'd wanna play in the Jorhas setting in the Wild Mount book from Critical Role, and it may or may not have to do with a particular character that we never got to meet. Thanks for submitting your questions. Thank you for watching this video. I have had a super duper time, and I hope you have a super duper week.